Okay, so trying to get a plate for the to cover the top of the electrical box, where it attaches to the one in my ceiling. The drywall is pretty good around it, but there's a little bit of a gap, so I don't really want that showing. I want it to kind of match the project. So I'm going to basically take some aluminum sheet, got at the hardware store, and I'm going to turn it into this. I've already made one. Basically this will just be a plate to kind of cover that up, that little gap between my box and my drywall. Got a couple of grommets in there, rubber grommets to keep the wires protected, because aluminum, when it's thin like this, is pretty sharp. And so this is kind of what it'll look like up on the ceiling above it. Kind of matches the box pretty close. The look is about the same. So I'm going to show you how I did that. It's not too tough at all. I'm just going to need basically, this isn't necessary for sure, but a compass helps a lot if you know a certain size of circle you want. 4.5 inches diameter is about what I needed to get what I needed covered. Then just something to cut the metal with, just some tin snips, some drill bits, and then the rubber grommets, of course, and then a small machine screw or bolt. I'll show you what that's for here shortly. Then you'll need a drill, obviously, and some gloves. This aluminum, when you get after you cut it, it's pretty sharp, so it'll get a hold of you pretty good. So what I'm going to do is match this circle I have here. I'm going to go ahead and just get my tape measure out and just double check. I'm pretty sure I made it 4.5. Yes, I did. So what I'm going to do is just measure over 2.25 to the center of my circle from the edge of my metal. I'm going to try to get it as centered as I can on my metal here. It's going to put me a dot. And then I'm just going to take my compass and make a circle off that point. First, what I want to do though, I'm going to take my punch and I'm going to make a spot for my compass to set into so it's not sliding around on top of the metal. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a hammer. You could use just like a Phillips head screwdriver or something like that. Just something to divot the metal a little bit. Just keeps the compass from walking around on you. And after I get my divot set, I'm going to set my compass off the edge of my metal, because I know that's the 2.25 radius I'm looking for. Make sure it's nice and tight. And I'm just going to draw my circle out. Okay. I don't know if you can see that or not. Pretty good circle with the pencil there. Then I'm going to go ahead and put my gloves on. I don't want to get cut. Done that before, it's not fun. And I'm going to take my snips and cut that circle out to the most accurate circle I can. This worked pretty well for this, so. Okay, so that circle looks pretty good. If you were gonna look really close, you can see there's a little bit of jagged waviness from when I cut it. It's pretty close, but I'm kind of a perfectionist, so I'm gonna try to take care of that, because that bugs me. And the way I do that, this is where the machine screw comes into play. What I'm gonna do is take the metal disc, and I still have a pretty good divot there from where I made my center punch for my compass, so I'm going to use that as my guide for my drill bit. And I'm just going to try to get me a bit that's as close to the same size as my machine screw as possible. I want it to fit kind of snug in the hole. That looks pretty close. Okay, when you're drilling your hole, the easiest way to drill through like a piece of sheet metal like this is put a piece of wood behind it and then drill your hole. It kind of keeps it from splintering so bad on the backside. The aluminum makes a nice clean hole on both sides. That may be a little small for what I'm trying to do here. Yeah, but I'm going to go ahead and step it up a size bigger. Okay. Now I'm going to put my machine screw through that hole. See, it's fitting in there pretty tight. And I'm going to go ahead and tighten my nut down on there. And that's going to need to be pretty snug. So I'm going to take just a Phillips head screwdriver. And I should have probably told you to grab one of those too. And a crescent wrench or a pair of pliers will work too, something to hold the nut. I'm just going to hold the nut and tighten down the screw. Pretty tight. I apologize if the camera angle is bad. Try to get the best I could. So now I have basically my disc on the screw here, and I got a shaft that I can stick it into my drill. Go and remove that drill bit. So now I'm gonna put my drill in my put my disc in my drill, and I'm gonna try to get it as close to the chuck as I can, just so it doesn't wobble around. You can see that disc isn't terribly straight. We'll straighten it out here in a little bit. For now though, it's be about right. And what I like to do is take a grinding wheel. You could probably use a file if you had one. Only problem with that is aluminum's soft, so it'll kind of clog up your file. You can see I've already done one here, and it's already clogging up my grinding wheel a little bit, but not too bad. And what I'll do here is put on some safety glasses. And I'm just going to basically use my drill as the hub, and I'm going to use this to kind of more perfect the circle and get rid of some of these rough edges around the outside of it. And I like to walk the disc kind of back and forth around, that way you're not cutting in and kind of gumming up one spot on the wheel. Seems like it cuts a little better when you're doing it that way. Be very careful with this part, because when this is spinning, it's basically like a spinning razor blade. I mean, that will cut you really bad. And so my circle's looking pretty good. Got the high spots taken down. I still got a little bit of a kind of a rough lip around the edge. So I'm going to take a piece of sandpaper and a rag, something pretty thick. I just got some scrap sandpaper laying here. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. I'm using 100 grit. You could probably use 150, it'd be fine too. Really anything would be fine. And all I'm going to do is take that rag and that sandpaper to kind of protect my hand from the metal. I'm just going to run the drill just kind of around that edge. Now that's nice and smooth, there's no burrs on it. I'm going to do it on the back of it also. Okay. Now all the burrs are gone, it's a nice circle. I am going to take my sandpaper and just kind of do a scuff on the front, because I'm going to be putting a little bit of paint on this in a minute. And all I'm going to do, the only part of this that's going to be showing outside of the box is going to be the outside ½ an inch or so. So I'm going to just concentrate on that, because it's not really important to do the inside. And so I'm just going to take my sandpaper and my drill, and I'm just going to hold it on the outside edge. And now my metal is nice and scuffed, so paint will stick easily. You could also use steel wool if you wanted to here. Sometimes they put a little bit of oil on the metal and they send it out from the factory. Aluminum not so much because it doesn't really rust, but it does corrode. But now it should be good for paint. So now that we've done that, I'm gonna take it out of my drill. Gonna take that machine screw off. So now we got a pretty good disc here. Good enough for what we're doing. And what I'm going to do now is just going to line my box up on the middle of it as best I can. I'm just going to eyeball it just to try to get close. And I'm going to mark, let's see. I'm just going to mark these spots where the screws mount so I can put holes there so that when we put it up there the disc will stay, and have spots for my mounting screws that go through from my box extension into my existing box. And I'm just going to, like I said, eyeball it as close as you can. It depends on how perfect you want it to be. Most of the time people, when they look up at your ceiling, aren't looking at the box itself, they're just gonna look at the lights. And that looks pretty close. So I'm just gonna take my marker and mark my holes. And make sure if you have one of these box extensions, when you're marking the hole, don't mark the big part of the hole, mark this slot right here because that's where the final screw is gonna set. So now I've got my two spots marked here and here. I'm gonna do a 1/4 inch hole. Just want to have a little bit of play so I can make sure I don't have to fight getting it in there later. So I got my 1/4 inch drill bit. And again, you're going to want to back it on a piece of wood, that way it doesn't splinter out so bad in the back. And on this, I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm going to go ahead and punch these so I get a nice clean hole. It's not walking, the bit doesn't walk around on me too bad. Like I said, you can use a punch here, you can use just a Phillips head screwdriver, and I'll show you both. I have a pretty pointy Phillips head, and it does just as good of a job here. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and, on this part here, it's a little bit, let me see if I can get an angle in the camera here. It's a little bit more, it's not really dangerous, but I like to be safe here and just go ahead and clamp it down to the tabletop. I've had a few times in the past, and I probably should have done that here in the middle hole. I've had a few times in the past where the drill bit's dug into the metal and it spun the metal in my hand. And that's what I was talking about earlier, about how it feels to get cut. It is not pleasant. So this way, at least your hands are not around the edge of this aluminum in case it starts to spin on you. Because this, like I said, it's just like a spinning razor blade. So that hole there, and that hole there. Now we got our nice 2 clean mounting holes. I'll kind of show you how those line up here. If I can get my camera angle right. So I got my 2 mounting holes to hold my disc up there above it. Now we just need a place for the existing wires to pass through. Now I thought about just cutting a bigger hole here with a hole saw. That leaves a pretty nasty, rugged hole that you have to clean up. So I think what I'm going to do, like I did on this one, is just use the 2 grommets. That's a pretty fail-safe way to make sure you have a nice protected hole so this metal doesn't cut into your existing wiring. Just protects the wire and protects you. You know, if they cut into the wire, aluminum's very conductive, so this will be electrified. Same with any other kind of electrical box. You just kind of want to protect your wire from any of the sharp edges. So the grommet and the hole works pretty well. And on this, I'm going to do a 3/8 inch hole. That's what size grommets I happen to have on hand. And all I'm going to do is just, so I don't have a hole here that I've wasted. I'm just going to go ahead and use that existing hole in the middle since we don't really need it there anymore. I'm going to go ahead and clamp back down again. I'm going to go ahead and drill that middle hole back out. And I'm going to go ahead and make one more. And I have just a hot and a neutral wire since our house is an older house. So I'm just going to do two, just one for each of those. And I'm going to be grounding my fixtures to the actual box. So I'll go right here. And this piece of aluminum I'm using, the sheet I got, it was pretty inexpensive from the hardware store. I believe it was a 6-inch by 18-inch piece, and I think it was around $5. So not too bad. It's not a real heavy-duty sheet. As you can see, it's pretty flexible. You know, plenty good for what we're doing. It's just going to be for covering a hole, so no one's going to be touching it or looking at it up close really. So now I've got my two holes here. And I'm just going to use some grommets I got from the local automotive parts store. My hardware store didn't carry them, so. And the holes are pretty clean, so I'm going to go ahead and just stick my grommets in. This sometimes is a little bit difficult. My hole should probably be a little bit larger, but it's the largest drill bit I have, so I could probably waller it out a little bit with the drill bit, but I don't really like doing that. So I got the other ones to fit, so I think these will be fine. Like so. Then you get a nice protected hole there. Keep your wire from getting cut up by that sharp aluminum. Go and do the other one. Okay, so now that I have that done, the disc is pretty out of it's not flat anymore. It's kind of been up for me messing with it here. And all I like to do with that is I'm just gonna kind of go from the middle out and just kind of make a little bit of a, not a cone, but a slight cone shape to it. So I want this to kind of push up against the ceiling, and then that way it's not actually bent down from the ceiling around it anywhere. Not that I'd think that it would really be noticeable, but just to be safe, I'm gonna do that. And what I'm gonna do now, this matches my galvanized box pretty close, but I found if I dust it with a little bit of this Rust-Oleum metallic aluminum paint, it makes it match pretty close, so a lot closer. You can see I did that on this one, and it's just a little bit more, it's not quite the same color, but it's got that more galvanized look to it. You know, I don't know if it's really worth the trouble or not, but you may prefer it to be just aluminum. I think the color matches a little bit more here, but it doesn't have that galvanized, that kind of speckled galvanized look. So I'm gonna go ahead and just dust it real lightly real quick, and then it's gonna be ready to go up inside. So I only need 2 of these, I think, so for now, of course, plans may change in the middle of the project, but for now, what I got here is about what I need, so I'm gonna call that good.